Toastmasters and distinguished guests. Let us begin with a poem entitled In Poems, my tribute to poetry. To express certain words uncommon to plain dialogue, I make the mere metaphor metamorphosized into a monologue. Raining cats and dogs instead of overcast showers. Take some passion, a pen and some paper. Now there's power. Like the hour when I wed her, love can be expressed much better. Like a director, I thought I was pretty clever when I said, I choose to love thee, that thou mayest see, that only our chords make true harmony. Sung from eternity, a song with no end. So every day when I awake, I fall in love again. I appreciate that type of creativity when its nativity comes from the heart. I play my part in songs and in psalms, soliloquies and similes to God, friends, and family. I write, I pray, and I love in poems. Do a Google search for my name, Arvell Craig, and you will find many things listed. You'll see my blog, Arvell Craig, my old blog, Dying Empty. You'll find my business website. You'll see social media profiles, Facebook, LinkedIn. Click on the Images tab, and you'll see my photo. You might even catch a shot of my daughter and my wife. Click on the Videos tab of Google, and you will find videos of me teaching internet marketing concepts and, ironically, how to control what shows up in Google. But one thing you will not find in any Google search, or Yahoo or Bing, and that is my tribute to poetry. You won't find that poem or any other song. I figured if we're going to break the ice this morning, why should I share anything that you can find in the Google search or on Facebook? Let's talk about something different. Let's talk about poetry. In the story of my life, poetry has not been the major character of my story, but she has been a significant supporting actress. When I was 3 or 4, I recall my mother writing a book, her first book and only book, and it was a book of poetry. And even to this day, in her 60s, my mother will write a poem to eulogize and celebrate people who die at their funerals, friends, loved ones, family members. My mom still writes poetry. Now, my brother and I, growing up in Detroit, on the east side, in the midst of crackheads and drive-by shooting, we weren't writing no poetry. We would write other types of things. We got something from my mother, but we wrote gangster raps, full of obscene and foul language, the typical stuff, NWA stuff we watched. That's what we wrote. But don't worry, I'm not going to share with you any of my brother and I's raps. But I will share with you these words, written many years after my childhood, in my 20s. I wrote, faith was my tennis shoe, but business deals call for Kenneth Coles. The vision blurred, the queen deferred, vanity can never make you whole. This was in my 20s. I had graduated college, gotten saved, working at a church, and running my first web design business in Kalamazoo, Michigan. One day, I am driving my pastor's pastor from the airport to the church. This guy, Bishop Joseph A. Garlington. I never met him before, but in this drive, we're just talking about all sorts of things, super friendly guy. And somehow my poetry, some poems come up in the conversation. And he has the nerve to interpret my poem and tell me something that it meant that I didn't know it meant. He said that, Arvell, you are putting off and delaying and neglecting what God has called you to do. You need to stop what you're doing and go to Tulsa and fulfill what you know God said to do. The words, the vision blurred, the queen deferred, vanity can never make you whole. He said, Arvell, did you know that theology was the queen of the sciences? And that when you said the queen was deferred, you might have thought you were talking about some girl or some relationship, but that was you deferring your call, what you know you're called to do, was to go to Bible school. I was instantly convicted, and within 2 months, I dropped everything, left Kalamazoo, and I've been here in Tulsa for 12 years now. Final story. 10 days ago, I'm talking to my friend Tony. Tony no longer lives in Tulsa, but when he was here, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, he was my music producer. When I aspired to write lovely worship and praise songs and have churches all around the world sing it and send me lovely royalty checks. Tony was my guy. And Tony and I are talking, we're catching up, and I'm explaining to him some things that I've told a few other close friends over the past 2 weeks. I told Tony how I am dropping my business. I'm getting out of it. And I will, instead of building my own empire, I am going to build another man's empire. I am going to have a simpler life without those responsibilities and hassles that I've struggled with. And I will also be working on finishing my first book, and hopefully, with the help of Toastmasters, be a competent and confident speaker, sharing the topics from my book. So I'm telling Tony this story, and I've told a few other people, but in this conversation, something hits me. I remember that, or it just comes to mind that in the past 7, 8 years since I had my last business, I have not written one single significant poem or song. That aspect of my life, which I got from my mother, seemed to have been asleep, hibernating, effervescent. I forgot the word. And so now that seems like sad news, but to me it was affirming, helping me to see that the seasons of my life are changing, and though I'm putting one thing to sleep, perhaps there may be some room in my life for poetry to come back. And perhaps in the next 9 months, 12 months, year or two, if you Google Arvell Craig, in the midst of all the business background of myself, you might also see some poetry. Mr. Toastmaster.